Uh,
remember.
Picking up a couple of boys from Porch Camp. Yes.
Oh,
So,
love
yeah,
it. Those were the days. We both can probably remember that. Both of us probably being in 4-H. I miss those days, sort of, kind of.
they are precious. They're very sweet. So I'm going to pick up a couple of boys that probably have taken one or two showers all week long and drive them home and get back to work. And so yeah, no, it's fun. So I pulled over and I'm kind of excited because I'm up here on Mingus Mountain and I have 4 bars and 5G. So we should be good, Julie.
Awesome.
So
I
right.
so, like I said, I so appreciate this. I've got some fun things to talk about. And for those that are joining us live, I hope you stick with us. I kind of want to talk about, we had some surprises in the Arizona budget proposal and their initial proposals taking water funding from the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority. At least that's what it says today, but hopefully they get it straight, Shawn. So we might even talk a little bit about that. And if there's anybody that gets this stuff, you do. A farmer, an entrepreneur, chair of the Women's Leadership Committee. I classify you as my trifecta rock star. So we've got all sorts of stuff to talk about, Shawn. And of
You're
course,
too kind, Julie. But yes, go ahead.
as I was telling guests as they were joining, we're focused on the USDA, or United States Department of Ag Census of Agriculture. It was released in February, and we have some pretty interesting and impressive numbers here for the state of Arizona. So my first question to you is, we're obviously celebrating some of those numbers, and one thing it points to is Arizona agriculture's efficiency, especially noting Arizona's productivity. Without looking at the figures, because I don't have them right in front of me, I think we came out at 5.2 billion in our productivity captured in 2022. So what's your take on this amazing efficiency in Arizona's agriculture?
Well, my take is I'm not surprised, but I'm very happy to see that it's reported, because when you take a look at our state, we've been efficient from day one. I don't think anybody pulled into the state, whether it was on a buggy or a horse or by foot, and said, I think this is going to be an easy job. We've got sunshine, we've got great soils, we've got limited resources and water, but there's a lot we can do with it. And so I think from day one, we've been very efficient and continue to be efficient. And so those numbers, I think, just simply reflect what we're doing. And it's good to see them in there. So that's my take on it.
And Shawn Wood is a farmer from Buckeye with her family, and you would be third or fourth generation farm family member.
In Arizona, so my great grandfather dairied on the Dean side, and my great great grandfather patented farmland out in Arlington. I think I'm fourth.
Okay.
So yeah, I'd have to third or fourth, somewhere in there, but multi-generational for agriculture, maybe third or fourth in Arizona.
That's awesome. And something to be proud of, and proof of the pudding that sustainability exists in agriculture when a family has been in it for 3 or 4 or 5 generations. That's, to me, the first mark of sustainability. There's other issues related to sustainability that are very important, but hey, a shout out to Agritopia Farm. Thank you for joining us. Brooke Lunt, my gut tells me that might be Christy Davis. If it is, Christy, hi. Yeah, this is too fun. Okay, so second question. According to the United States Department of Ag Census of Agriculture, again, related to the earlier question, Arizona had the highest percentage of female producers identified as the primary producer, and we're at 48%, compared to the national percentage of 35%. Some of this is due to what the United States Department of Agriculture, quote unquote, likes to call the American Indian effect. And to explain that for those that are joining us live, by the way, we've got 15 people live on it that have come on live. And one of the things that we can identify is in the Navajo and Hopi tribe, their tradition is, it's more of a matriarchal tradition. So the female is identified as the primary landowner / farmer for a lot of these tribal lands out there on the reservations. So, but there's also, I guess, for lack of a better word, is also the Anglo female farmer. We have a lot of up and coming beginner farmers. I think, although she might not consider herself a beginner farmer anymore, but like Janet Anderson from Maricopa County, you might have
Mhm.
met her, and some other, and yourself, you and your family, I believe, is doing farming as well. So, I mean, how do we more celebrate this significant statistic even more?
Well, it's funny. Well, we have our hands in a lot of different things, and some days I'm like, "Oh, am I a farmer? Am I not?" But then when I get the duty of irrigating, yeah, I'm definitely a farmer. I had to do that a week or two ago, and it's not usually my job, but I do enjoy it. But so when it comes to celebrating that, I heard I was in DC last week, and there was a couple of different people who spoke, and I heard this, and it resonated with me, and it's that it's not necessarily celebrating women over men or Arizona over another state, but
Right.
I think truly when you look at this, the quote that was said was that we don't make you don't make cookies with half the ingredients, and so um, whether it's been recorded in the past, how many women are involved or not, or whether this is something new they're doing better at kind of reporting that. I mean, my grandma and grandpa were equals in in what they did and how they made things work. So I think women have always been they've always been involved. I think what we need to celebrate is that in Arizona we have this resiliency that I've seen in just my work and working with a number of different ag families and across Arizona. And it's what it takes
Right.
to be in agriculture in Arizona and in agriculture in general, but Arizona specifically. And I think that resilience is probably seen through those numbers, whether that's in the Native American areas or whether that's in, just more women getting involved. But I think we have a very resilient agriculture community and industry in Arizona. But I think we also need to celebrate that it's open to new, beginning, young women, male,
Yep.
minorities. And so for me, that's really where the celebration is. I think that it's just we're trying to thrive.
Right.
We could get everybody to believe we're trying to feed them and clothe them. That would be a great thing. But I think those are the things to celebrate. It takes all of us to really keep this industry strong and healthy and robust and trying to clothe and feed the world. So that's where the celebration I think should take place.
I love it. And I love your story about last week. You got the assignment in the family to be the irrigator. That's
Yes.
perfect. I can relate to that when we were farming. And your point about new and beginner farmers, and the marker for the United States Department of Ag is if they've been in farming for 10 years, they've passed that entrepreneurial 5 year still surviving. So, um, and apparently we have a really good representation there as well. It's that same percentage, just under 50% are new and beginner farmers. And it might be the next generation, but they're new
Mhm.
to managing and running the farm on their own, that type of thing. And the average age, because everybody's worried. I even said this on the Mike Broomhead show yesterday. Everybody's worried because the farmer keeps aging, and the average age of the farmer in Arizona is 60 years old, 2 years older than the average American farmer at 58. But I said, you've got to look at the whole scope of those statistics. If a good nearly 50% of our farmers are new beginner farmers, whether they're generational or brand new, the average age for them is 48.
Mhm.
So we're doing a lot better than what sometimes, if you look at just one portion of the statistics, you got to look at the whole picture. So I'm glad you brought that up, Shawn. That's very good, a very important point. So you come, like we've been talking about this, a generational farm family, and you're, depending on what side of the family you're talking about, it might be 3 on one side of the family and 4 on the other side of the family. You're also a land in the land
Mhm.
brokerage business. Your business is arid state lands. Is that
Mhm.
correct? So what has been more impressed upon you over the years when it comes to agriculture in our state and just being an entrepreneur?
Um, well, tell you, I consider myself very blessed. I've gotten into a place in my life where I went off to school and I wanted to be a commercial pilot, and I'd grown up on our farm, and I had worked many years chopping cotton, baling hay. That was my summers, and had no thoughts about staying in agriculture. And then when I went out and I got my license and started that track, I realized there's something warm and welcome about agriculture in the industry. It's not perfect, obviously, but there's just something about the culture. So when I came back to that, I was fortunate enough to find a place in doing kind of an off the farm job as far as appraisal, brokerage, consulting. And then I had the opportunity to work with people all over the state in agriculture. And that's what I continue to do today. So I've been doing that for about 23 years, whether it's helping with estate management stuff or buying, selling, finding people property, kind of helping people assess if now's the good time to sell or not. Those things have put me at many kitchen tables. And I think what I find most is that it's the culture of the Arizona agriculture people, and mostly Arizona in general. The community that is the most impressive, and probably what gives me the most hope for really like the survival of it. There's just this resilience. There's this stories, these generations of things passed on, and it's a common thread, and I continue to see it. The older I get, the more I work with people. It's a common thread, and I've had a hard time kind of putting words to it. But I'm not sure if I answered your question there, Julie. But that I think is what impresses me most about Arizona agriculture in general.
I you totally answered it. I'm with you on that. There's a the with agriculture, we kind of have a common denominator, and it's not just about the work ethic. It's not, there's this relational ability for us to, support one another, encourage one another, come alongside one another. And yeah, I totally get that. And I'm glad that that's how you brought it out. So I have another land broker question. What's your take on the checkerboard shifts in ag land here in Arizona? And what do Arizonans need to be aware of? Like if you had somebody come up to you and say, "Oh, I didn't know you were a land broker. Gosh, all this ag land is going away. What's happening? Are we going to be able to feed ourselves anymore?" That type of thing.
I'd say that's a good question. Vote wisely. Vote
Yeah.
wisely. I thought about this question when you sent it, and it goes into we could go deep into the thoughts on the different perspectives of Arizona's water, who it belongs to, how it should be used. And in reality, if agriculture was there first and established it, and we're feeding and we're clothing people with that water, it comes down to a property rights issue. And um, it is extremely important to 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 keep that in the forefront. So when we look at development, I mean, for every acre that's taken out of farmland, Arizona has somewhat moved into a position of very little future land being developed into farmland.
Mm,
So essentially, what we have, I mean, there's still opportunities for it, but it's becoming diminished because we're in a drought, and we need to be wise about our resources. And I think overall, as a state, we fully recognize that. So it shifts the real estate perspective. And
mm,
so if someone asks me, how are we going to feed and clothe people with all this land being developed? It's a good question. And then it comes down to, well, when did you move here, and would you like your family to move here? And so it's always this dynamic of weighing development and forward progress and economic progress um, with a sustainable food chain and a sustainable local food chain. And so that's, I think, kind of, I mean, that's probably that's a day long conversation. Anybody wants to sit in the car with me and visit for a day long as we go inspect properties? There's a lot to that, but ultimately, if I think what we need to really focus on is that agriculture needs water.
Mhm.
These lands need water. If a farmer sells their land and they don't have the right to sell it at full market value, that really puts them in a place of not being able to go and purchase land somewhere else and continue their farming operation. So whether we're growing it here, we're going to grow it in Wilcox, we're going to grow it in Paloma, or we're going to grow it, I mean, there's
Right.
lots of places around the state that we're growing. So um, I don't know, that's probably a roundabout way of answering your question, but the other thing to note, I think, with Arizona is it's so micro specific in all of our markets. So because we have 7 different zones, and we're anywhere from, slightly below sea level all the way up to, 10,000 feet, where we've
Wow.
got all different types of, of properties and things to consider with that. So,
It's not like if I was a land broker in Kansas, where it's pretty much sweeping and fairly flat.
right.
They probably don't have 7 microzones. And I've
Yeah.
thought
And
about
then, yeah. And then I think additionally, I mean, we have, well, I know we track 26 different irrigation districts, and every irrigation district is different,
it.
right? So,
Right.
and then every forest service is different. So, there's lots of idiosyncrasies, but I think the cool thing about that is that there's lots of micro growing areas and specifics to it that really help us keep our food local if
Yeah.
we want it, and if we can continue that with our growers and producers. So.
One of your fellow Maricopa County Farm Bureau members, and I know you know him, Steve Sossaman, he points out that yes, we lose land, but there's shifts. And he said the efficiencies of our farming compared to today compared to even just 20 years ago, 30, 50, 60 years ago. So in many ways, as it relates to agriculture, um, we have, um, how did he say it, compensated by the efficiencies and how much we can grow in our football field size. We call them acres. I'm trying to be careful because I'm talking to the public. I want them to understand that an acre is basically the size of a field. What we're able to grow in an acre versus what we used to be able to grow. So yes, there's kind of this shrinkage, but we also are creating other opportunities and efficiencies, and we have to keep doing that. Hello, Roby Livestock. Thanks for joining us. And just kind of pause for station identification. I'm interviewing Shawn Wood, our Women's Leadership Chair here for the state, or for Arizona Farm Bureau, a statewide organization, and also a farmer and a land broker. So all sorts of fun things coming from Shawn's neck of the woods. So I was kind of correct in saying a checkerboard shift in land issues, right? Because there's from microclimate to microclimate, there's definitely always something different. But on to the next question. What's the most important conversation you like to have with people not familiar with farming in
Oh, that's always fun. Kind of in my travels, tend to run into people Midwest or East Coast, and it's always an interesting conversation because I think there's either kind of two visions. I think people see, they see this like desert, desolate, tumbleweed, like rolling through this desert kind of vision, or they see a golf course in Scottsdale in February, and those are kind of the two visions they see if they haven't visited Arizona, or sometimes if they have. So for me, it's a really fun conversation because um, over the last 23 years, I probably cover about 60,000 miles a year. And
gosh,
I think we've appraised over 1,000 properties at this point. And when we do that, we're also looking at, at least 5 to 10 other properties while we're out there. And so all the nooks and crannies. So it's really fun to talk about anything from Yuma's vast produce industry and the impact it can have um, if there's something that goes on with the lettuce in the wintertime, and versus also the impact if New York has a super cold front come through, their demand for lettuce drops, and Arizona feels those prices because everybody switched to soup instead of
right.
salad. And that we are that primary source. all the way to like, the lavender farm in Pine, or the ranchers in northern Arizona and up around the Grand Canyon, and all the way over to Safford, or down by the border. Some of the, some of the, like God's country, some of the most beautiful ranches are down off of the border, north of the border, that has its own challenges. And so Picacho, like just kind of running through, and then this like urban farming and all the opportunities in those microclimates. So that's what I enjoy sharing, because I think it broadens people's perspective. And it's really hard. You can see them trying to process, like, does she know what she's talking about? Because all I see is like tumbleweeds tumbleweeds and a cactus when I think of Arizona. So that's fun when I get a chance to do that. That's what I share with them about Arizona, and that I, just me probably being very proud of the state I come from, but we are really good at what we do.
We are.
And we continue to improve upon it. And, in the 23 years I've been observing people making changes and innovations. And I was just down on a farm maybe a month or two ago, and they had two new technologies they were implementing. And one was from Israel, and it increased the hydrogen in the water whenever they irrigated, and it has improved their alfalfa stands like 2-3 fold.
Wow.
Just incredible technology. And so I think a lot of times we're fortunate because we're kind of out on, people might be getting, a new loan because they're kind of implementing. So we kind of get to see that at the forefront a lot of the times. And then we might get back out there on that farm 3, 4, 5 years later and be able to see kind of what's worked, what hasn't. And obviously always analyzing, comparing that from a real estate perspective. So those are all fun things to
That
share
is
with.
awesome. And you're going to have to tell me who that alfalfa farmer is, or that family, because I may want to interview them if they're willing to be interviewed. And that's why we try to do what we do at Arizona Farm Bureau through Talk to a Farmer Friday, is we're trying to introduce people to some of these amazing, innovative individuals and how committed they are to improving water efficiencies, improving their soil efficiencies and stuff like that. I love to hear those kind of stories. And by the way, J.A. Gilliam 83 said, Mrs. Wood is a phenomenal resource within the ag business. Go Shawn. And I so agree with that comment.
Thanks, Jess.
Yeah, that's fun. We've had a lot of people join, and this has been fun. Shawn Wood with Arid State Land, and also a farmer in Buckeye, and also Arizona Farm Bureau's Women's Leadership Committee. Kind of exhausting schedule, and we impact it on you too, because as you briefly mentioned, you were in Washington, D.C. last week with the Women's Committee, and doing rock star things there as well. How hopeful are you? Having said all we've been talking about, and both you and I are native Arizonans, we're very proud. We both grew up on farms. We both farmed. I remember those days irrigating. How hopeful are you about the future of Arizona agriculture? And before you answer that, we are Lima. Help us understand what drives some farms to be more innovative and take on new technologies compared to the vast majority of farms that wait to see the results of other farms. Well, it depends on who you're talking to. I don't think in Arizona we wait. There are there's always going to be early adopters in technology, but we can't afford to wait too late and too long in Arizona, just because we have so many challenges. Even as the weather is our biggest blessing, but we also have to be a lot more sophisticated with the way we farm because of heat. But is there anything else you'd like to answer to that before you answer the hopeful question?
Yeah, you might have to ask me the hopeful one again, but I think the best like example I can give folks is that everybody is different, is on a different place in their profitability and their ability to take on risk. So if I am just getting started, and if I and farming is hard, it is hard and it is risky. So if I'm just getting started, or even if I'm not, maybe I've inherited, or maybe I've purchased a farm and I'm just barely kind of making the payments, and cotton dropped or hay dropped, and you're following commodity prices, and a new technology comes out. Let's say like back in the 80s, drip came out. I'm probably not going to be in a place to be the early adopter on that. And then you might watch an early adopter, and you're going to watch them walk through some of the challenges, some of the failures. And oftentimes those early adopters, hopefully, are the ones that can sustain that. But I will tell you, as soon as, I mean, the the general the general communication chain within agriculture is very tight and very communicative. And so when somebody finds something that works really, really well, people are usually all over it, and and they're trying to figure it out. So whether somebody's getting extra tonnage or I mean, my brother grows corn extremely well, and people are watching to see what seed he's planting and how he's doing that, and got some other farmers that grow alfalfa extremely well that really like set the bar, and people are always trying to understand how they're doing it and what they're doing. And so what drives some farms to be more innovative? To me, it's the ability to kind of, number one, it's personality, probably. And number two, the bigger one, is your ability to kind of take on that risk, because for one that works, there's oftentimes two or three that do not. I mean, we
Yeah.
can kind of look at colored cotton. We can, there's a number of examples we can use over the years that just didn't pan out. And so, yeah, I think that's probably the best way to describe that.
Brilliant and beautiful answer on that one, Shawn. The other thing too is that we always talk about um, subsurface drip irrigation scaled on large farms, and it is an amazing technology, and it can cut your water use in half. Some have reported in half and even more. So everybody says, well, why isn't everybody doing it? Well, again, it goes back to can they take on the risk? And some soils are not conducive, nor are some irrigation systems conducive, like the irrigation district that you live in, and you have very high um, salinity water. I think I'm using the right term, or there's just a lot of, you know, debris in the water. Well,
Yep.
a drip system's not going to work. So technology that works on one farm down 5 miles down the road might not work at all. So
Mm-hmm.
good point. And then Melanie C. Dean, is that somebody you know?
That's my sister-in-law. Look at her popping in. Good job, Mel. Um,
Shawn, farming seems like such a gamble. What resources should farmers use to make educated decisions around innovation? I like that question. Go for it
yeah.
if you want.
So, Mel, I love her. She's my sister-in-law. My brother, she didn't come from farming, and she's originally from Canada. So it's been, I think, very super smart girl, but very interesting for her to kind of adjust into a family that's like self-employed and farming, and try to work along my brother with those risks. So from my perspective, it is such a gamble, but the resources, to me, every farmer has built his resources in himself, and that is, oh, there's the park ranger driving by. That is that that is like the important part of legacies in agriculture. It doesn't mean you can't learn it from ground up. You do, but so number one, resources are farmers that are growing, and ranchers that are growing, but then they're also our community of agriculture folks. So that's one thing Farm Bureau does, is it kind of draws together and provides that opportunity for community, but even just in our local areas and in our counties and your neighbors, and chit-chatting about what works, what doesn't. But when you're looking at new innovation, I mean, number one, you're going to have your salesman that's going to really be bought in because they really love their new technology and they think it's great. Number two, though, trying to vet through that and see where you can find those. I mean, Farm Progress, there's a lot of articles that come through. Julie, you put some things on occasion, new technologies that are coming through. So I think if you're an early adopter, or everybody's constantly looking how to improve their bottom line. And you improve your bottom line by being more efficient.
Right.
And that's one thing that I think the public just, unfortunately, agriculture hasn't communicated and marketed that in a way that the public understands that. Right. But so to Mel's question, I think that it's just that constant lifelong education, seeking those opportunities out, and then also talking to your neighbors, and not just your neighbors, but the other thing I found is by kind of traveling around the country that I have the opportunity with the National Farm Bureau. It's really interesting speaking to other people in other parts of the country, but also other parts of the world. So right now we have quite a with some educators looking into and exploring Israel's options, and Israel has done some amazing things with water quality. I was on a dairy the other day that had a water treatment system that was brought in from Israel, and it's like this top-notch system that's super efficient, and it made sense for their operation. It won't make sense for every operation, but those type of things, just I think talking to people and reaching out and just being inquisitive is
Yeah.
going to really help. Yeah.
Yeah, and I might even add, you kind of referenced at the national, which is American Farm Bureau Federation. I would definitely say that Farm Bureau is a resource, and then the commodity-specific
Mm-hmm.
agencies like the Arizona Cotton Growers, the Dairy Council, United Dairymen of Arizona. I know the Beef
Yep.
Council. All of those are resources for us, and a lot of times while they may not be the first to introduce us and tip us off to a new technology, some of the other resources that they provide are just amazing. And I know I say that with bias. I work for Farm Bureau,
No, it's true.
but
Yeah,
my
it's true.
my parents prior to me, so I use them as the example. They had been members for 45 plus years, and my dad kind of paid attention to the Arizona cotton growers because that was our cash crop or our main crop. But he said, Julia, I will always be a member of the Arizona Farm Bureau because I don't think anybody does policy development and track the legislature and well, and the government on the local, state, and federal level better than any other. And again, he's coming in with a bias. So, but it is a resource. So there's another question that came up, but I want to make sure I get this hopeful question in for our listeners. We're really having good participation today. How hopeful are you about the future of Arizona agriculture, considering everything we've talked about and some of the challenges that we face? And you're kind of like, you you're front and center. You're looking at this at 30,000 feet and you're looking at it at the ditch bank. How hopeful?
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's at the ditch bank, it's at 30,000 feet. And then it's also through the hearts of every landowner in Arizona, I would say. And, and I think that's kind of one of the perspectives I can bring is that working across Arizona, these policies can where it can be benefit one side, it can be such a negative aspect in another area, and fair is not always fair. So it's really something to wrangle with. So how hopeful am I for Arizona agriculture,
For its future?
for its future? I will tell you, I'm hopeful, and here is why. I feel like this last year is not last year, you could extend it, but essentially this last year or two has really been a battleground for
Yeah.
water and agriculture. But at the same time, we're in a drought, and the efficiencies and the conservation efforts need to be looked at, and they need to be looked at seriously. The challenge for agriculture is we seem to take the brunt of all of the
I
cuts.
know.
Whether it's the cities, we haven't seen them want to take any cuts. Industrial, they don't seem to want to take any cuts. Um, our power supplies, they don't seem to want to take any cuts. So that really leaves agriculture, which is really kind of an unfair situation because we still need to feed and clothe people. So we should essentially look together as a state. How do we reduce that? So there's a lot of very smart people working down at the Capitol trying to make sure that agriculture's voice is heard and understood. Very thankful for Senator Kerr's efforts and many efforts down there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but my hope is this for Arizona and agriculture. And I think it goes back to my first question. We're a resilient, we're a resilient group of people. We are a resilient community. We are a tough community. We are a community that's built on an industry that's essentially built on grit. And like I said, whether you drove in here, whether you're born here, walked in here, came in on a horse, I don't think you looked at Arizona and thought, man, this is going to be easy peasy. And so as things change and we have to look at becoming more efficient, I think we're going to see technology coming. We're going to see more adoption to that. We still need to clothe and feed people, but here's probably where my hope comes from. I think we've had two or three good generations of really a very healthy economies, not a lot of trials, tribulations. I mean, COVID wasn't anything to go through that was fun, but essentially, if you've got 15-year-olds paying $7 for a coffee and not blinking twice. We really haven't had a lot of strife
Yeah.
in our economy. But what I've noticed is this generation, there's been a generation that's kind of returning back to homesteading. It might be kind of my age, moms and more younger, but they want to know where their food comes from. They want to know how to can. They want to, and there's like this growing demand across the country for this, and I like to see it because ultimately, I think what they'll find is that it connects them back to their food, but it also helps them recognize and respect how hard it is to grow that food. And in reality, if you're growing it for your family and you're doing great, but if you start to expand your mind and think about how would I grow that for 10,000 people or 100,000 people, I think it's going to start bringing us back where we need to be as a country and understanding that it it is difficult to feed that many people, and we need these farmers, we need these ranchers to be producing this food for our country. And so I'm hopeful for those
Good.
reasons, I think.
Yes. Those are good reasons. Toby Stutzman, Lori Hibbard. Yay, Lori Hibbard. Thanks for joining. Lily Valley Farm, and then Dylan Irwin 05. Thanks for joining us. We've had quite a few people and some good questions. So I think it would be scandalous if I didn't ask you about the leadership conference that's taking place July 11th and 12th in Tucson that is being spearheaded by the Arizona Farm Bureau's Women's Leadership Committee, which you chair. um, any fun, like, so the rooms have sold out. We've we're, I think the last I heard, and there's probably more coming, but 114, 115. I think one of the committee's goals was that 120, so I think we're going to hit that in terms of registrations. But guess what? If you want a hotel, if you want a room at that hotel, we've sold out, and that's a good problem to have. But any kind of, like, any late breaking news, anything fun that you want to highlight for?
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to make it clear, people can still get their room, they just can't buy it within the book,
Oh, I
the
get
room
it.
rate, right? So,
Okay.
yep. So feel free to still get your room. You just don't get the early bird special. And 120, but boy, if we could hit 140, I'd love that challenge to figure out how to fit everybody in there. 150. Here's the thing I think I'd like to share with that. Number one, uh, I'm I just have to shout out to this committee. So I just feel extremely fortunate and blessed. I chair this committee for the last 3 years, and it is a group of 20 women that are from all over the state and all different counties, and also from different agencies, ag agencies. And it's fun. Incredible women that come together, have great ideas. And this year's what we wanted to focus on was innovation. And so the theme is navigating agricultural innovation. And really, the whole purpose is to put some new tools in front of people, whether that's how we look at we have some people coming to talk about soil technology. We have stoats coming to talk about some of their precision technology. And then we have relational work. We have some workshops on negotiation and some different things. But I think the fun part is this kind of came to us. We had a request from the Undersecretary of the USDA Trade last week, asking if she could fly in from DC and do an opening address for the event. So that's going to be exciting to hear from her.
Awesome.
She operates the 1.3 billion in the specialties markets and also works in a couple of different of the other areas. So we're super excited to have Undersecretary in to speak to the group. Then a couple of other fun things that we're doing. We always do this tailgate talk, which is kind of a very casual panel. The thought process behind it is that I've always felt like I learned the most from people when you're just chatting over the tailgate. And so we keep it very casual, but we try to talk about things that are maybe a little bit more challenging to talk about. This year, the panel is going to be with the media. So we have 4 different media individuals who will be on that panel, and we'll be visiting with them about what are we what are we not doing well, and what are the challenges in their world in getting out, and what are they seeing. So that's always interesting. And then we have a couple of change makers. Senator Kerr will be speaking regarding her time at the Capitol. She's finishing up her Senate seat here, maybe in the next week or two. We'll see when they close session. But yeah, so we just encourage.
Awesome.
You know, we gather. It's a good time. You visit with a lot of people, learn some things, walk away surrounded by some pretty cool people around the state, and we look forward to anybody who'd like to join us down there.
Yeah, and you don't have to be an Aggie necessarily. So
Nope.
if you want to join us, and it's also really fun to extend it to the family, because the hotel, by the way, go to AZFB or Arizona Farm Bureau, just Google it and go, and you can register in the events category. You'll find it, and that's or azfb.org. But it's a fun family affair because it's the GW Marriott, right?
It's the JW Marriott
JW.
Tucson Star Pass. And
Yeah.
I'd like to share too, this event in the past, many years ago, it was the women's leadership. But about 5 years ago, we shifted to just a summer leadership conference hosted by our committee. But it is open to men and women,
Yeah.
because what we've noticed at one point, we kind of focused on mental health, and we didn't want to exclude that to just women. We feel like what we put together is a pretty good product and pretty good event, and we just feel like we want the ag community to have an opportunity to continue to learn and gather, and so anyhow, so it's open to both men and women, and yeah, there's people that bring their families, and the kids hang out in the pool while they're off coming to the convention or the event. So would love to have anyone who's interested.
That's awesome. I'm going. We're going to try to cover it. And by the way, that media panel, I guarantee you, they'll let you know what we need to be doing better to connect with them, because they're journalists, and that's what they're in the business of doing, telling us what's going on. So I am going to extend this a little bit, but if you have to go to pick up your boys, I understand that. But if you want to make any commentary, I'm going to read just a brief snippet of this article that came out yesterday. Arizona budget takes water funding. WIFA reacts, which stands for Water Infrastructure Finance Authority. Shawn, I know you probably heard about it, but and so you can leave whenever you need to, but I'm going to talk to my colleagues here that are joining this. Hi, April Horn. Thank you for joining. But the budget, we're kind of like in the 11th hour with this
Mm-hmm.
budget, or they're calling today D-Day. The Arizona state budget is in a $1.4 billion deficit. And so they're hunting for places to cut. But one of the craziest places they're cutting that they've kind of proposed is related to the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority. You need to, everybody that's listening to this, you need to reach out to your legislators, because here's the story. The process is still ongoing, but a document outlining crucial points in the budget is being circulated around the state capitol. WIFA, which is that Water Infrastructure Finance Authority, would not get its third year funding. It was already voted on. It was already passed. It's something that's we're supposed to be committed to. It's a funding of $333 million of water supply funding, and another transfer of $157 million meant for other uses and what's known as sweeps in order to help mitigate the state's projected $1.4 billion, according to the Arizona agenda. So you're probably saying, well, what is this? What is the authority's job? The job is to allocate funds for the construction, rehabilitation, and acquisition and improvement of water structure. And according to their website, so you can go and look for it yourself. The point being, everybody's saying, oh my gosh, farmers, you have to be better at cutting your water use, which we have been for the last 50 years. But now we also have some opportunities through this state agency to make it really work. And they're wanting to cut. So, and I know in our desperation to find places to cut, but this is a throwback, Shawn, to like about 8 years ago when they did sweeps. And I've been told that's illegal. So we're kind of in a crunch time. It is D-Day at the state legislature with the budget. Any thoughts on that?
Oh, I have a lot of thoughts on that. Excuse me. There's a lot of politics happening down there.
Yeah,
I mean, our district alone that we're in, the Buckeye Irrigation District, has been a recipient of some of those funds. And what we've been able to do has been, what they've been able to do has been really helpful in the conservation efforts.
right.
Like all things, if we're in a deficit, I mean, it's hard. You take a look and you try to figure out where you're going to slash it. So I know they're working hard down there to get that done. But it is interesting that there's been 3 different bills that have been worked to try to improve the water situation here in Arizona. And they're either getting stalled or they're getting worked or they're going to just not make it to the governor's desk. There's even one on the governor's desk. And then they're going to, then they're trying to slash this. And obviously, I think everybody probably has their opinions on what to slash. I mean, there's education, there's other big ones that you could hit, and obviously we don't want to try and touch those. But I would just say that this needs to stay in there if at all possible. And my understanding was the funding was there.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're trying to swipe those funds, that's the part I think the public doesn't recognize that. And we've had funds swiped from other ag funds that we've, like, so when you sell your cattle and you pay into it, and then, or your cotton or whatever it might be, those funds are set aside specifically for that. But in times of need, the state comes through and can swipe them. So, I mean, there's a lot of thoughts to this, but I just hope they leave it in there. And I would just suggest, if anybody has the opportunity, please reach out to your legislators, make sure we leave that in there. And again, vote wisely.
Yeah.
I think at times like this, when people are frustrated or they're wondering what happened or why are we in a deficit, when before we were not.
Yeah.
Vote wisely. And be cognizant of that when that comes. So that's my only words of advice, I guess, at this point.
I think they're very good words of advice. And if you're very concerned, especially when we are trying to be a very proactive water use state, because we are a desert state. And I'm going to end on, she was our government relations director for Arizona Farm Bureau, Chelsea McGuire, and I loved her quote, brilliant young woman. And we were heartsick to see her go, but we are very proud of where she is at this agency. But she said WIFAs, again, I want to keep, because that's an acronym, the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority. And it's actually one of those agencies that has a lot of transparency, opportunities for people to see what's going on, nothing done in the dark. It's awesome. But she said WIFA's still discussing and analyzing, because all this has come down in the last 24 hours. We definitely have questions about the message that these cuts would send about the state's commitment to water security. That's the whole point. I love that she says water security. We're working to try and find those answers as negotiations continue. Chelsea McGuire, WIFA's Assistant Director of External Affairs, told the Center Square in an email on Wednesday. However, they said they will ultimately work with what they're given because state agencies have to. Meanwhile, WIFA's committed, regardless of the outcome of this budget discussion, this is Chelsea continuing, to continuing our transparent, intentional, and rigorous approach to bringing water security and augmentation projects online. And they already have. There's another article, and I can't remember but we've already brought in, they've already, with some of the project, let me see if I can find, these projects are already estimated to have saved as much as 5.5 million acre feet of water over their lifespans, a decent chunk of water with savings in every county. And so that's the other thing. What I love is these smaller rural community papers have reported this the day that this guide was released, and apparently it was a leaked memo of where they were planning on making some of the cuts and or in this case a sweep, because really this is already committed money. There was supposed to be 3 years of funding and they're just deciding they're not going to fund it. But Shawn, I've kept you probably way too long. I know you've got some boys to pick up, and I really appreciate all you do on a volunteer basis for Arizona Farm Bureau, and so proud of your continued commitment as a family to agriculture here in the state of Arizona. So let's stay in touch, and I will see you on the 12th because I'm going to be there to learn a lot at the Leadership Conference, July the 12th.
Sounds great,
11th and
Julie.
12th.
It was a good time today. So, yep, take care.
All right, bye-bye.